Starting it. Alrighty, hello. This is Liz, Derry Public Library's one of our reference librarians and definitely resident film geek. And as of today, birthday girl or birthday lady, welcome to Wednesday, which is of course Amazon Prime recommendation day. And so, since it is my birthday, I figured I am going to finally recommend all of the weird underground, really crazy stuff that you can get on Prime. So, sorry, I'm being handed a note. And it says, Liz, none of your patrons want to watch Street Trash or Body Melt. Okay, plan B. So, since I can't do that, I wouldn't want to subject you kind people to some of the stuff on Prime. I will give some of my personal Prime picks for today. Some stuff I've talked about before, some of this stuff is new. The first one I'm going to recommend is a documentary called Lost Soul, The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau. This was a documentary I saw about 4 or 5 years back. And if anyone remembers the 90s Dr. Moreau, which if anyone does, it's probably not fondly, this is the story of the film that would have been. So initially, the person who was supposed to direct it was Richard Stanley, who had had two successful independent horror and sci-fi movies, Hardware and Dust Devil. And he was tapped to direct this new Island of Dr. Moreau, the one with Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer. And it just went south from there. It is both an interesting story of how stuff can just completely go south in Hollywood, but it's also cool because you do get to see his concept drawings for what he wanted to do in the movie. And you leave the film with a definite idea of, yes, this would have been better than what we would have gotten. It's a great documentary if you love behind the scenes stories of Hollywood and the making of films. The next one I'm going to recommend is one I've recommended before. It's called Reds. It's the Warren Beatty film about John Reed, the 10 Days That Shook the World, and the early socialist and communist political movements, not only of the United States, but other countries. I think this is an absolutely great film. It's a part of history that isn't taught in schools, definitely, and sometimes isn't even talked about on a college level. And there's plenty of books written about it, but it is an era of history that people tend to ignore when we talk about the early part of the 1900s. It pretty much, in many cases, goes from Teddy Roosevelt to World War I, and we discuss the massive amount of social movements that were happening in the United States. So I think this movie is fantastic. It's got an amazing cast. Maureen Stapleton won an Oscar for her portrayal of Emma Goldman, who is, I think, a very under-researched figure in many cases. So I would say watch this. I think this is Warren Beatty's best film in terms of the one he directed. So hopefully you'll check it out. I know it's 3 hours, but don't be afraid of long movies. If anything, right now, we have all the time in the world. So going to something a little bit more recent, I'm going to talk about The Birdcage. I love this movie. It came out when I was a little too young to see it, but I know that my parents went and they loved it. So I saw it a few years later. I think we all know this movie by now. Robin Williams and Nathan Lane play a couple. Their son's fiance's conservative parents come over and they have to pretend they're not a gay couple, and hilarity ensues. I mean, you have performers like Gene Hackman, Robin Williams, and Nathan Lane. Of course, this is going to be great. Although you also have Christine Baranski, who I think is always funny, and I think she's really underrated in this movie. Diane Wiest. She has a very a role that could easily have just been a nothing character, and she plays it so well, the long suffering wife. And I just love seeing her pop up in any movie. And this movie is interesting because it came out in the mid 90s. It was a little bit before Will and Grace, and it was the point in American society where people were just starting to really accept gay people, and the idea of, oh, they live normal lives, they're married, or, you know, in this case, they're couples. So this actually did play a role in kind of normalizing this for American culture. And other than that historical note, it's drop dead funny and has one of my favorite finales of any movie. From one beloved comedy to another, I'm going to recommend once again Moonstruck. This movie is wonderful. It's charming. It's a great family movie. You have Olympia Dukakis, who's just wonderful. You have Cher, who won an Oscar for this. It is a wonderful romantic comedy, and I am actually not a romantic person, but this movie just every time I watch it, it wins me over, and it's a great feel-good film. So, kind of feel next movie, kind of feel good. Other feel sad. Terms of Endearment. I've recommended this both as Prime and you can find it for free. I think I've said everything I can about this. It's probably the ultimate mother-daughter film. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll come to terms, as the tagline was. Shirley MacLaine probably gives the best performance of her career. It's either this or The Apartment. You have Deborah Winger, who is a great actress, and I still get sad that she didn't get more roles after this. I think she was kind of pushed aside for different types of actresses. And you have Jack Nicholson playing a great supporting character. This is a great, if you want an example of a good dramedy, you have Terms of Endearment. Now, so I am going to talk about some weirder movies. Although a lot of people have probably heard of the first one, John Carpenter's Escape from New York. Or at the very least, you've heard of Snake Plissken. This is a great, if you like post-apocalyptic movies that aren't all doom and gloom and sad, this is great. It's basically Snake Plissken's a criminal. He has to go rescue the president into New York, which New York is pretty much just a walled-off prison now. And it's a good race against time movie. Adrienne Barbeau's in it. Harry Dean Stanton is in it. You have Isaac Hayes as the main villain. It really is a relic of the late 70s, early 80s era. I know there's been talk about doing a remake. I guess it could work. I don't know. I think there are some movies that are so just like set in that time. I'm not sure how you can update it. I do think it would be updated better than something like, say, The Warriors, but you'd have to really sell me via casting because, in my opinion, nothing beats Kurt Russell. So finally, onto a movie that was made within the past 5 years. Alexander Garland's Annihilation. So if you've heard of this unfortunately came out about a week after Black Panther hit theaters. And if you paid attention to the box office at that time, Black Panther just demolished all the competition. And that's a shame, although this has gotten a second life in streaming and on home video. So this is adapted from Jeff Vandermeer's book of the same name. So a woman is going into this territory of the earth called the Shimmer. And it's a place where a comet hit and the earth is being transformed. Not quite terraformed, but it's just not right. And people don't want to go there because they're like, what the heck is happening? It's a good sci-fi movie. I will say, there is some gore in this, but if you want a sci-fi movie that isn't just, alien invasion or, trying to think of a word, but you want something that has a bit more of an intellectual side to it and a bit more of a human side, I would say go with Annihilation. And also Natalie Portman is in it, and I think she is really good in this role. I kind of wish she'd gotten more attention for it, but if you want a sci-fi movie that's going to stay with you, I'd watch Annihilation. Also, if you're a bear fan, oh boy, there's the bear to end all bears in this movie. Next is my favorite movie of 2019, Ari Aster's Midsommar. I loved this movie. I think if you want to watch any of Ari Aster's films, I would watch this over Hereditary. Hereditary is so depressing. I think it's almost repellent, whereas Midsommar, it's light, it's pretty, it's still a horror movie, but it's not as repellent as Hereditary. The basic gist of this movie is girl goes through a personal tragedy. She goes with her boyfriend on this little retreat to a small town in Sweden. She starts to realize, I don't think everything's right in said small town. And if you keep watching, you realize it's an allegory for bad codependent relationships. And it's still, I think, one of the most beautiful films that came out last year. Ari Aster knows how to make a visually striking film. It's not for everyone, but I would say if you want to watch a horror movie that is not a slasher, that's not exploitation, but that's actually a crafted story and well directed, I would say watch Midsummer. And same token, I would say Rosemary's Baby as well. I think everyone knows this movie, and unfortunately, everyone kind of knows the end. But I think it is still, if you've never seen it and you don't know anything about it, watch it. And I think there's also another level of horror here. It's not just the idea of what is going on with Rosemary's pregnancy. You start to realize how many of Rosemary's friends and family actually want to protect her. And for me, I think that's even a scarier prospect than anything supernatural. It's the idea that the people you trust are actually not trustworthy. And I think that is one of the main reasons Rosemary's Baby endures. And as a bonus, Ruth Gordon is in it. She won an Oscar for her role as Minnie Castavets. I love that performance, and it's actually a dream Halloween costume of mine. One of these years, I'll do it. So, on to the two more really weird recommendations. The first is, and I'm wearing the pin today, The Stuff. So, there's a director called Larry Cohen. He likes to make strange little movies that are on one part horror and sci-fi movies, other parts social commentary. So, The Stuff is about this calorie-free, delicious ice cream-like product. So everyone loves it, everyone gets to eat it, and it turns out to potentially be a very harmful product. So you can see where this is going. It turns out to be a commentary on fad food, on diet food, which was really big in the mid-'80s. It definitely gets a little gross towards the end, but I think for a low-budget social commentary horror movie, it works really well. And we lost Larry Cohen last year, and I gotta say, shine on, sir. I miss him. And the final one I'll recommend is this film called Society, which I think is a very timely film. So we're talking a lot about class inequality, wealth inequality, and this idea of, who lives off of whom. And there is a great line in this where it's like, oh, come on, you know that the rich have always sucked off of the poor. And this movie takes that concept of the wealthy leeching off of people who work into a very literal direction. It has one of the most bonkers finales I've ever seen in a movie. So I would say content warning, it gets kind of weird and kind of gross. But I would, again, if you want a horror movie with a brain, I would say watch Society, because as a fan of horror, I love to tell people it's not just brainless slasher movies. There's a lot of stuff out there that does require you to use your noggin a bit. So final two recommendations if you want something to binge watch. The first I'm going to recommend is the first 5 seasons of RuPaul's Drag Race are on Amazon Prime with your membership. RuPaul as a personality, I can kind of take or leave, but the show, if you like Project Runway, and if you like America's Next Top Model, RuPaul's Drag Race is fantastic, because if there's one thing you cannot deny about drag queens, these are performers. And to see them working on their craft and crafting personas, crafting costumes, it's a fun process to see. And a lot of these people are extremely funny. And if I had to recommend one season, I would say season 4. A lot of big personalities in season 4. The final thing I'll recommend is 30 Rock. It is probably my favorite show of all time. It's laugh a minute. And the great thing about that show is even if you have already watched it, watch it again, because I guarantee you there is a joke that you have missed. All right, so thank you for coming along on my birthday recommendation episode. We'll be back to normal tomorrow with Hulu recommendations. Have a great day. Oh, and happy Earth Day. Bye.